Hi everybody, it's Claudia from Create with Claudia. Thanks so much for stopping by. Today we're going to be doing clue number 3 of the Cotton Cuts puzzle mystery quilt called So Sweet. So stay tuned. Alright, so like I said at the beginning, it's clue number 3 of the Cotton Cuts So Sweet puzzle mystery quilt. The color version that I am doing is Churro, and I'm doing the small version of it. Loving, loving, loving this fabric. This is by Sharon Holland for Art Gallery Fabric. The line is called Bookish, and it's really coming together nicely. I'm really enjoying this. This is the first time I've done this puzzle mystery quilt by Cotton Cuts, and everything is so easy. Everything is numbered, it's organized, it's coming together like a breeze. So stay tuned. I'm going to set up my camera a little differently so you can see me working, and I'll show you how to put together clue number 3 of the puzzle mystery quilt. Alrighty, so here's my pamphlet that I have been keeping. Make sure you don't throw that away. This is my Churro version, and on the back is sort of my map. It basically has all of the fabrics we're using this month, and I have not gotten rid of this. I gave you the tip in the first video. Definitely snap a picture of this in case you do lose it. And if you're like me, I misplace things quite often, but for some reason I've been real careful about this and staying organized. So anyway, I'm going to set that aside, but this tells me what colors I'm going to be using. So let's open up clue number 3 and see what we have inside. Okay, so they printed out, I sent this, I got the the directions via email, so I printed those out, and then here are the pieces for this month. Let's see, we've got some long strips. Now the one thing I will say, it says on the pattern, these long A strips, which I believe are these, because this is fabric A, this is that real light background fabric. It says these are cut 1/2 to 1.5 inches longer than they need to be. So this month it looks like we are going to need our rotary cutter and a ruler to trim them up. But when I get to that section, we'll go over that. But other than that, there's a couple others. Now normally I don't press these. They come so nicely. These long strips, because they're folded, I will cut those really quickly. But here are all the pieces. Oh, still so pretty. And I'm going to take a quick break. Let me move that up here. I'm just going to show you really quickly all the pieces in this month. Now again, this is the Churro version. You, depending on what version you have, of course, will get the different fabrics. But what I'm going to do now is lay these out just so I can look at them and make sure I have everything. And these 2 longer strips, let me move that up so you can see it, they have a fold in it. I'm just going to run over and press these really quickly before I get going. Okay. So these have been nicely pressed. I'm going to move my instructions out of the way for a second. So there are all the pieces, a lot of pieces this month. So it's going to be interesting to see how they go together. So let's get started. It looks like there are 2 sections. There's a 3A section and a 3B section. And each one looks like there's two of the same block, I should say, in each section. So 2 blocks of 3A and 2 blocks of 3B. So the first thing we're going to do is sew together, sort of like we have been in the past, make some half square triangles with fabric C to fabric F. So fabric C is, I'm not sure, this might be my favorite in the line. I know you're not supposed to have favorites, but I really love this. And you are going to join this. And there are only 2 of them for this one. And you're going to join this to this triangle, to the fabric F triangle. And you're going to put them right sides together. And you're always going to maintain that nice 1/4 inch seam. Line them up really nicely. I love the way these are cut. You might be able to see it better on this side. I love those sort of squared off edges. It makes it so easy. You just that 1/4 inch seam allowance right down there is a breeze. So I'm going to do that, but I'm also going to put away these other pieces because I think there are a lot of pieces for you to look at. It might get a little confusing. And then we're going to sew these 2 together. There's 2 of them, and then I'll show you what we do next. Okay, so I moved away the extra fabric pieces, and I'm just going to leave this pattern here to help me out a little bit. And here are my 2 half square triangles that I finished. I sewed together, and I pressed those as per the instructions towards F, so that darker fabric. That's what I love also about this pattern. It has all the pressing directions on the arrows. So the next thing it says is to join a small triangle. We're going to put them this way. You need a triangle of fabric A, which is this light sort of background beige. I shouldn't call the background. I don't know if it's the background or not. And you're going to join that like so. And I will say, if you're using this, the Churro version, this is really light fabric. It's really easy. I've done it, I think, each month now where I flipped one over and accidentally sewed it the wrong sides together. But you want to place these right sides together, and you're going to sew a 1/4 inch right down. You're going to line that up nice and easy. And just sew that 1/4 inch right down that seam right there. So it's going to look a little bit like, well, you'll see how it looks. So I'm going to... Okay, so here they are, nice and pressed. This time we pressed towards A, so towards that lighter fabric. So I'm going to set these, I'm going to move these up here to the top. The next thing it says to do is take a square of F. F as in Frank. So here's that, and it looks like we're going to make 2 of these. And I'm sorry, we make 2 of those other unit as well. I meant to say that. So you need 2 square Fs, and you're going to take another one, some more of these triangles. And that's how we're going to lay them out. Like so. And we're going to sew that to that and that to that. And again, you're just going to nicely put them right sides together, line them up, and sew a 1/4 inch down that side. So I'm going to do that, and then we press to A. So again, we're pressing to that light fabric. All right, so here they are. They're finished, just like the diagram says. And the next thing it looks like we do is we get a square of fabric C. These 2. So here are my 2 units here. I'm going to put those aside as well. And here are my 2 C's. I'm in love with this fabric. And then you need 2 triangles for each square of fabric A. So some more. Obviously, we're doing a lot with these triangles today. And I'm just going to show you one right now, but you're going to repeat it both ways. And it looks like, as per the pattern, that's how it's going to lay out. So you're going to, and then what I'm going to do is first I'll do the top one first. So I'll put them right sides together. Then I'll press that out, and then I'll add that. So don't add this until this has been attached and pressed out so that you have a nice flat surface. Okay, so here these are sewn together. I did both of them. And now you're going to add this next unit like this. Now this is nicely pressed. You're going to make sure you line up that edge. Just flip it over, right sides together. And tip for this one is you want to use this corner to line it up with. And that should give you a nice, there we go. And then I'm going to just sew down this edge a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Just keep that 1/4 inch seam allowance going. Before I sew this next one on, you may have noticed I did not pin this on. You may want to here just because you don't want this to slip. You want this to be a nice straight edge on this side. As I've said before, I'm notorious for not pinning. So actually I'm going to pin this one just so you can see it. You can pin it or clip it. But again, right sides together, line it up. And I will just show you how I would pin this. Just so it doesn't slip. These are new fabrics and they're kind of slippery. And that way you can ensure, hopefully, with that 1/4 inch seam allowance, whoops, that you get a nice straight edge when it's pressed outwards. Okay, so here we go. I press them open and you can see how it's nice. It's like one continuous edge. Hopefully you can see that. Maybe better on the green background. There's 1 and there's 2. And if you look, it's just like one continuous edge. That's what you want to try and get. If you don't, it's no big deal, but that's really the goal of really lining those pieces up nicely. So the next thing we need is a triangle of fabric E. And it looks like we need 2 of these triangles. And this is that really pretty sort of dusty green, I guess it's like a darker mint color. And it looks like, I'm just gonna put one aside here, we sew them together like this. So basically you're gonna put them right sides facing. And here's my tip for this one, and this one I will pin. But boy, I tell you, the way these are cut is just so helpful, and they fit nicely. They look like they fit nicely. Just want to line up those edges right here, and I will pin just so this doesn't slip. Pin or clip. I've been using clips more often, but I couldn't find my clips this morning. I'm cleaning up my studio space, and I think I put them somewhere I shouldn't have. So you're going to sew 1/4 inch along this long edge. Now, here's my tip. You could sew it on this side if you wanted, but the best part about quilting is sometimes it gives you little clues. I'm actually going to pin. This is slipping a little bit, so I'm going to pin on this side too. Sorry, my chair squeaks a little bit. But this is what I wanted to show you. When you're sewing that 1/4 inch, this point right here, let me use my seam ripper here to point. This point right here where this thread is, that'll give you a nice point. So you want to sew down this side so you can see where that point is, and you can sew on or just maybe a thread's width, outside of this, so towards this edge above that point, and that'll give you a nice sharp point. That's just a little secret tip there. Not really a secret, but it's a tip. So you can sew on the other side if you want to, but I like sewing where I can see that where those seams meet. That helps me a little bit get those points, or at least try to. And believe me, I am not always successful, but that's a nice way to help it out. All right, so here they are. I pressed towards E like the directions said, and that gives it a nice sharp point. And because I sewed where I did, hopefully you can see that nice sharp point right there. I like that. So there you go. We have these 2 squares. Now you make 2 of those. And then the next thing we're going to do, let me read my directions. So the first thing you want to do, you're going to sew, let me make sure I'm doing this right. You're going to get this. You are going to join step 3, which was this one, the triangle, a square F to triangle A. And you are going to, let me just see, aha. You're going to lay it like this. So if you look at your directions, so that would be fabric F, triangle A, and it looks like that's what you're making right here. So you will do that. Let me make sure I turn these the right way and use the right pieces. Yep, that should be right. Okay, yeah, I always like to make sure. And because of the way we press, these are going to nest really nicely. So here again, I'm going to pin. So you're going to lay these together right sides. And you're going to nest that seam. And because you pressed in opposite directions, they should come really nicely together. And that I will definitely pin there. Just right on that seam, just so it doesn't move. And everything else should be good. Line them up, and I'm just going to do that 1/4 inch seam allowance along there, and I'm going to repeat it over here. And then it looks like we press towards this smaller unit that we're just attaching here. All right, so here's what it should look like now. And again, we pressed towards this way, towards that smaller section that we added. And the next thing we're going to do is bring this part that we did in step 2 and add it like that. You can sort of see how it's coming together. And we're going to just sew that to this side on both of those squares. Again, nesting like we did. And pinning there in that center, right along that seam. Like so, and then lining them up and using that 1/4 inch seam allowance. And I'm going to do that on this one and the other one because you're going to make 2 units. Okay, so here we go. This is what they look like now. And that's nice. You have that nice sort of continuous seam if we did it with the nice 1/4 inch seam allowance. So that looks good. This one does too. We press to the outside. This was the unit we just added, and we press towards the outside. And the last thing we want to do now is add 2 more triangles, I mean 1 more for each block, excuse me, on this side, just so we can finish up those blocks, and that's 3A. So I'm going to do that, just put them right sides together, and that was that tip again where you want to sew on this side, line them up, and then we will just sew along that 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'll pin along here too just to get it. And you're going to line. Okay, so here we go. These 2 units are done. This was section 3, let's see. This is section 3A. So we're going to put those aside because now we're going to make section 3B. So the first thing we need to do is with section 3B is we need these strip, and it looks like we're making 2 of these. We need strip from fabric B, which I believe is this. This measures, oh, you know what I forgot? I did want to tell you, these should measure 6.5 inches square. So you might want to double check it, but I think these are, because of their cutting and the 1/4 inch seam allowance, this should be good. But you're looking for 6.5 inches square on those 3A sections. So you're going to need 2 of these strips and then 2 squares of fabric D, which is this really pretty rose. And you're going to sew 1 square on each end of the strip. So you're just going to lay them right sides together and sew a 1/4 inch down, and then you're going to press towards the longer strip. Now when it's finished, it should measure 12.5 inches by 2.5 inches. And this Alright, so here are the strips. I'm going to move that out of the way a little bit. Let's just measure one. It should be measuring 12.5 inches by 2.5 inches. And I press towards B. I'm just going to do a quick measurement. And actually, it is 12.5 inches. Awesome. So let me double check this one. I'm just going to throw it on top real quick here. 12.5. Bingo. We're good. So I don't need to worry about that. So we're going to set those aside. I'll set them up here so you can still see them. The next thing is we need the 2 strips of A. And then you are going to put 1 square F on each end of this, sort of like we did with the other strip. We're going to do that for this one as well. All right, so here are these 2 strips, and I forgot to mention they want you to press towards the fabric A in this case on both of these strips. And now we're going to grab one of those strips we made a few minutes ago, and it looks, whoops, like we're going to add them like so. So you're going to add this smaller strip that you just added, and this one should measure, let's see, before I start that, this should measure 6.5 by 2.5. So let's just double check that. I'm doubly checking this month because they did mention it, so just, you always want to be sure. 6.5, yep. And 6.5, just by a hair. So, okay, I'm going to put that away. So again, let me just check the diagram. We're going to sew it to this end so that rose, or, well, I don't know what color it's going to be, your fabric D is going to be in the center. We do that 2 times. All right, so here we go. Here they look. Here's what they look like, excuse me. They are ready to go. Now it looks like the next thing we do is we're going to join this large triangle of, rectangle. Yes, I do know my shapes. We're going to join that to the bottom of this unit with F being on the left-hand side. And I forgot to mention, when you're sewing these together, press towards A. But we're going to line this up on this side, and this is definitely where the trimming is going to be needed, and that's what they highlight here too. So let me go ahead and sew this a long strip, so you want to pin here. Let me show you. Pin along or clip along the way, because you want to get a nice straight line. I always find it, personally, I don't know about you guys, but I always find these really long strips like this are hard for me. I don't know why. I don't always get a nice straight line. So a lot of people love doing like you know, strip piecing and then they cut out their units. So, you know, if you were doing something like that, I have a real problem with that. Again, I don't know why. Maybe it's because I don't pin a lot. But in this case, I'm not going to let my bad habit of not pinning rub off on you guys, and I am going to pin and hopefully get a really nice sharp line along that, nice straight line. And when we're done with that, we're going to press towards A. So we're going to press towards that solid, this solid fabric. All right, so here we are. They are sewn together, my two longer strips like this. This should measure 4.5 inches wide by 18.5 inches long. And obviously we need to trim a little bit here. So let me get out my ruler and my rotary cutter. I'm just gonna flip this around. And we're going to use, let's see, I like this one actually has the 18.5 inches. We're going to line the 18.5 inches up along this left side. That's the side I evened out. And you just want to fidget a little bit to make sure it's nice and even. You want to line up that seam. This is how this helps me, because you want to line up that seam. So you need to play with it a little bit, because you want to make a nice even cut on this end. So there's a nice along that seam. So you have a nice straight, line it up here with the 18, whoops. And of course I knocked it out of place. But that's how I cut a strip like this, is I'll just line up this line here on the measurement I need, 18.5, and then line it up on that seam. And then I'm just gonna cut that edge off, close that up. Always, those are so dangerous. I've cut myself more times than I can count. You can keep that for scrap or just leave it. And there you go. There's your 4.5 by 18.5 inch strip. And I'm going to do that really quickly with the other one. And then there's one more step, and then we're done with clue number 3. All right, so these are cut up. And then the last thing we want to do is we are going to sew 1 square F to 1 square A. We're pressing towards the A, and then we're going to add that, excuse me, let me move those around. We're going to add that to one end of the strip that we made a minute ago. So I'm going to sew those together, press them to A, and then I'll show you how we finish up these 2 strips. All right, so here we go. I've pressed these to A, and then the last thing we do this month is, let me get out my directions. Looks like we're going to sort of, like they're opposites. We're going to add this to this end of the strip. You can see, let me see if I can move it over a little bit. You can sort of tell you want it on this end. You're going to add that with a quarter inch seam allowance. Again, pinning here, you get nice, because we pressed towards A in both cases, you get a nice nesting here. So I'm going to do that 1/4 inch seam allowance down that side and repeat it with the other strip, and then we are done for the month. Alrighty, that was it. That's month 3. We did 2 blocks that look like this, and then 2 strips that look like this. And we are done. I'm going to label those. Make sure to label each month so you don't get messed up. I know I can easily do that, so I'm trying to be really good and organized with this mystery quilt. Just a reminder, I'm doing the Churro version, and I'm doing the small version of the quilt. There are larger versions, and there are a lot of colorways. Now, I think they're getting ready to close these up very quickly. So if you're seeing, I'm really going to post this video tomorrow, which I believe is April 4th. So if you're seeing this and before April 8th of 2022, you can get, use the code CLAUDIASEWSWEET, and you can get a free gift. But they are closing sign-ups on April 8th, and I know there are some colorways that are sold out. I'm not sure about Churro. I think last time I checked, they didn't have many left of this colorway, but there are loads of other really pretty ones too. If you're new to my channel, welcome. I'm glad you're here. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I try to post weekly. I've been sort of bad this last month. I had a lot of projects. I got behind on some things, so I haven't been posting as much in March, but I'm hoping to get back in the game in April. But I post all kinds of things like free quilt tutorials, free patterns, all kinds of tips and things like that. So I hope you check it out. I am also on social media, Facebook, Instagram, you name it, I'm on it. So I hope you check that out too. You can find the links to all the information about signing up for this quilt this mystery quilt, excuse me, if you're still able to and you see this video in time. So go ahead and check it out. It's over at Cotton Cuts, but I put the link in the description. So thank you so much for stopping by today, and have a wonderful day.